Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bermuda Government's Facebook Live virtual session on the draft Northeast Hamilton Local Plan 2021. My name is Michael Brangman, and I'm from the Bermuda Government Department of Communications, and I'll be your moderator tonight. Before we begin, I want to take a moment and thank you all for joining us and for submitting your questions both prior to and during this session. I expect tonight to bring about thoughtful and engaging discussions. We want to hear from you. So please have your questions ready when the time comes. So at this time, I am pleased to introduce from the Department of Planning, Director, Ms. Victoria Pereira, and planners, Mr. Paul Mcdonald and Mr. Kenny Campbell. Thank you all for attending. Ms. Pereira, I hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Our efforts this evening are to provide an overview and key information regarding the local plan for Northeast Hamilton. This plan has undertaken a great deal of research over the last few years, and we've reached a space now where we are happy to provide more information on it and gain viewers' opinions and also hear of any questions. This evening we'll be making a presentation to provide information on the key concepts to do with this plan. It covers the Northeast, obviously the corner of the city of Hamilton. It provides a policy framework that is flexible in order to attract investment and also to realize some benefits also for the community, both the existing business and residential community as well. This plan was officially launched on July the 2nd, and we have entered into a public consultation period that started on August the 2nd, and it officially ends on October the 8th. So during this time frame, we are looking to hear from members of the public, in addition to those that live and work in the area itself. We need to hear these views because at this current state, the plan is draft, and it's these views and feedback that we will need to finalize the document. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Mr. Campbell to start the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just share my screen.
I also would like to add just to all the audience that you can feel free to submit any questions that you have through our Facebook page. You can also email them in if you wish. The email address is askus@gov.bm, and we will do our best to answer every single question that comes. Back to you, Kenny.
Can you see that okay, Michael?
Yeah, I can see it great.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Kenny Campbell. I'm a planner within the forward planning section of the department, and I'm going to do the first part of the presentation covering some of the high level elements of the plan, and then my colleague Paul Mcdonald will delve into a bit more detail in the second part of the presentation. So this is the overarching vision for the plan, which is to realise Northeast Hamilton's sustainable economic potential in a manner which is cognizant of the established environment, sense of community and cultural importance of the neighbourhood. So what we're really saying with this vision is that, yeah, we want to encourage economic development and investment within the area. That's the ultimate goal, but that can't happen at any cost. And it's essential that the existing community and existing businesses and residents of the area are part of that process. So that was really, that was a concept which we wanted to go with at the start of the process of drafting the plan, and one which we hope we have successfully enabled to trickle down into the detailed elements of the document. So there are 6 objectives which underpin the vision, and I'll just touch on a couple of these. The one at the top left of the screen here is really the most important one, and really represents our starting point in preparing the plan. We're aware that Northeast Hamilton is our own statistics tell us that Northeast Hamilton is not a priority area for developers or investors when they're looking for locations for new projects. So we had to come up with a way of, certainly from a planning perspective, trying to make the area a more appealing prospect for development. And the way which we've gone about doing that is to implement a flexible framework which doesn't exist anywhere else in the island, certainly to this extent. So that was really our starting point. Another key theme of the plan is sustainability. So alongside promoting renewables, particularly within building design, we've also actually identified a number of specific brownfield sites within the area, development opportunity sites, we've called them. We'll talk about that concept in a bit more detail towards later in the presentation. But the idea behind that is that if we can get a couple of these key sites moving, we hope that that would get the ball rolling and instigate some regeneration and hopefully some economic activity within the area. Another key objective is to encourage innovative and contemporary forms of architecture. Now, traditionally in Bermuda, development guidelines have been fairly prescriptive, particularly in terms of building heights and setbacks. And we think that there is an opportunity, but particularly within the city, to move away from that and perhaps allow a little bit more architectural freedom for people to implement, excuse me, interesting schemes within the area. And that also plays into the idea of a more flexible framework as well. So that's something that we are specifically advocating within this plan. So this is the first policy within the plan, and it's the most important one as it sets the entire framework for the decision-making process that both the department and the Development Applications Board will have to go through when determining planning applications within North East Hamilton. And what we're essentially saying in this policy is that when we receive a proposal, we will look at all of the policies which apply to that proposal in the round, and we will make balanced judgments as to whether or not that's an appropriate development for the area. So to be more specific, if we receive an application and it doesn't meet the detailed criteria of a policy, that doesn't mean that it has to be refused. We can make balanced judgments, and if it's consistent with the overall ethos of the plan, it can still be approved. Now, in applying that methodology, we have placed we will be placing a great deal of weight upon a set of overarching strategic principles, which I will come on to in the next slide. So these are the strategic principles which will apply in all relevant circumstances. And as you can see, they're fairly high level considerations, and they're intentionally high level so that they are adaptable and could be applicable to a range of different circumstances. But they're also key conventional planning considerations that you would expect to see form part of the normal process that a department goes through when we're considering an application. So we have key high level issues like ensuring that development is appropriate in terms of amenity impact, ensuring that it's appropriate in terms of layout, design, scale, and ensuring that cultural heritage assets are protected and enhanced where possible. We also have a very specific element to this policy under point K. Now, as you're aware, Court Street is the main area for retailing and commercial activity within North East Hamilton, and that's something that we want to protect and promote. So what we're requiring within that specific district is that all ground floor uses of properties within that area would have to have what we've called an active frontage. And what we mean by that is that the ground floor must have some form of public interface in order to encourage additional footfall and pedestrian activity within the area. Obviously, we want to be encouraging more people to occupy the area, and given the benefits that that could have for increased expenditure and the benefits that can have for existing businesses within that part of North East Hamilton. So when we started preparing the plan, we were pretty clear that we wanted this to be an aspirational document, which was encouraging of appropriate forms of development and forms of development which we think would assist in delivering the vision and objectives that I've just spoken about. So we've identified 4 broad categories of development, and they're set out within one of 3 strategic policies within the plan as shown here. So those categories are where development would enhance the vitality and viability of the area, where brownfield land would be reused and where strategic infrastructure improvements would be delivered. We know that from previous consultation exercises that have been conducted in the area, the infrastructure is a big issue for businesses and residents. So we wanted to ensure that that had some high level recognition within the plan. So that's why that's in there and being encouraged and promoted by the document. The final category that we've identified is where the board would otherwise deem that a proposal would result in notable benefits to the area. So that's providing the board with additional flexibility to make what they consider reasonable and logical decisions to implement developments which would be beneficial for North East Hamilton. So I will now hand over to my colleague Paul Mcdonald, who's, as I said, is going to talk about some of the more detailed elements of the plan.
Good evening all. Thank you again for attending virtually this evening. I'll just have a quick chat about some of the key, I guess we call more proactive aspects of the plan, in particular this one, the development opportunities concept. This is an initiative by which essentially the department has identified some specific sites within the North East Hamilton area which we consider to be prime for development or redevelopment. The purpose of this development opportunities concept is really to act as a marketing tool, which would effectively, hopefully encourage developers to invest in the area. This plan does identify specific sites that those have been chosen really based on the our observations on the site, but this is not necessarily an exhaustive list so far. So as with all aspects of the plan, we are quite keen to hear some feedback from the local community. So really, if anybody does have any particular sites that they would like to market or like to encourage investment on, we would be happy to hear that. Really, the purpose really of the document in this case, not just identifying the sites, but also identifying what could be or what we consider to be potential uses for those sites. So the hope really is to start within the North East Hamilton area and at a later time maybe expand this into the city and the wider country. So hopefully we can have a living working document whereby developers can look at available sites and owners of those sites can actually put them into a document which investors are able to see. So we're hopeful that that is a mechanism which would encourage further investment. Another concept of the plan is the one of community benefits. Now, this is something which is quite common in a lot of other modern planning jurisdictions. It's something which is relatively new to Bermuda. The purpose of this really is, again, to encourage that or to ensure really that when we do receive development proposals within the area, there is a real tangible benefit to the area. There are a lot of occasions where a developer can develop a site and they can really get quite substantial returns on those developments, but often a local area doesn't really benefit from that development per se. So the purpose of this initiative is really to ensure that there is an actual benefit to the community as a result of development. That can be achieved in two ways, really. One, there could be a requirement for the developer to actually provide those improvements to the area, or we're currently working on a initiative whereby a financial contribution could be made, which would be put towards a particular project within the area. The plan does include a list of what we consider to be priority improvements or benefits for the different districts of North East Hamilton. This is something which has been derived from really the department's observations of what we consider to be the key improvements priorities for those areas. But again, we do really want to get some feedback from the local community, from local residents, local business owners, in terms of what you consider to be the key benefits for that particular area, or where you consider money would be best spent for that part of Northeast Hamilton. The two images which are on display right now, the one on the left shows a green space on Court Street. We've identified this as a potential area which could be improved, and some relatively modest improvements could quite substantially improve how this green space works. For example, we could look at raising the grade of the lot really to bring it up closer to the level of Court Street, or even improving access directly from Court Street to encourage people to use it. The image on the right, that is really an example of what can be achieved through community benefits in terms, specifically in this case, of really what we would call public realm improvement. And in that particular example, you can see there's a shared surface that's been created, which is quite an attractive surface, and it also is quite attractive in terms of how it would operate in terms of really being friendly to pedestrians and, you know, promoting pedestrian movement through the city. This slide again, it just shows another few examples of how community benefits could be used, or what could be done in terms of improving the area. The image on the left is the existing circumstances, and the image on the right shows a few potential improvements that could be made. So for example, we have some artwork added to the blank walls of a building and of a boundary wall. We have some street planting which has been added, and also you may notice on the right hand photograph the overhead lines have actually been taken away. This is something which has been identified as an issue throughout Northeast Hamilton. So those things are just some of the examples of what could be achieved in terms of bringing out benefits to the local area. We have identified 7 distinct districts within the Northeast Hamilton area. It's important to note that these do not operate as conventional planning zones as per the remainder of Bermuda. These really have been derived from our observations, and we've essentially tried to categorize the different areas based on the existing characteristics of each district. So really, every time a development proposal is put forward within those districts, by doing this, it does provide some guidance in terms of how we can assess applications and maybe guide developers towards what they should be looking for in terms of ensuring that development proposals are in keeping with the character of each individual district. It's not necessarily crucial which district a property falls within. As Kenny mentioned earlier, the plan ultimately has been shaped so that it is as flexible as possible. So ultimately, we do want to assess planning applications on their own individual merits. So what we have here is an example taken from one of the district pages of the plan. So you can see we start by identifying what we consider to be the key characteristics and features of that district. We set out some key objectives in terms of what we think would be the priorities to improve that district. And as I mentioned earlier, we've identified what we consider to be the priority community benefits for that district. But again, as I would stress, we are very keen to get feedback from the local community, and we would like to really get that and hopefully allow that to shape how we could look to carry out those improvements, which would be really dependent on receiving planning applications for development. So yeah, ultimately, this is really a starting point. So we're hopeful that this document actually just really gets the ball rolling, and we don't want this to be the end of the discussion. So even after this public consultation period is expired, we're quite happy for anybody to put forward further proposals and their further suggestions on what they consider to be the priorities of the area of each particular district. We do have the plan available in various formats. If you go to the website planning.gov.bm, there's a link to the PDF version of the document, as well as what's called a story map version. The story map version is actually quite user-friendly, so you can actually go into that and click on different sections, whichever bits you may be interested in, and it's quite a nice visual document as well. If you don't have internet access, we do have a few paper copies of the plan for inspection in the offices, so we're quite happy for people to come in and have a look at that. And if you want to discuss it with either myself or Kenny, then we're happy to do so. There's quite a lot of information I know that we have sort of given to you right now. So we are happy to take questions now, or we're also happy to have further meetings with individuals or with small groups going forward if that would be beneficial. So ultimately, yeah, we have the website and the email address where you can go to make your comments. You can actually, if you wanted to make a formal comment, you would go through the website. So yeah, if there's anything or any questions, then please feel free to ask.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul, Kenny, and Victoria. So again, I want to remind the audience that the email address is askus@gov.bm. And you can also post your questions into the Facebook chat underneath this video discussion. And also the link to view all the material is posted in that same area on Facebook. So at this time, Victoria, if you and your team are ready, we can begin asking some questions that we've received from the public.
Absolutely.
All right. So the first question is, so the area in question falls under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of Hamilton. To what extent have they been involved in preparing this plan?
Sure. The Corporation of Hamilton, they're a key stakeholder in all of this in terms of preparing any planning document for the city. So to that end, we've kept them fully informed about the plan from the very beginning. We've consulted with them numerous times on the basic principles for the plan as we began drafting it. Once we had completed the actual draft plan itself, we made a formal presentation to them. We were pleased with the feedback we did receive from them. They are expressive in terms of being very willing to cooperate, and because of course a lot of what the plan seeks to achieve, it does require collaboration with not just developers that come forth with proposals, but also planning as the vehicle to realize these developments, but of course the corporation, because if you're dealing with community benefits, as Paul was describing earlier, whether it be the provision of infrastructure, putting telephone lines underground. Of course, we're going to have to work with the corporation to make sure that can be achieved. Through the corporation, they also have various different committees. One such committee is the Residents Liaison Group, and there's also representatives of the corporation that were present at that meeting as well. So that was our opportunity to present to key residents of the area, who, of course, took the message back to, perhaps their smaller groups. We've also consulted with quite a number of other stakeholders, not just the corporation, and we need to make that clear as well, including the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. They've been very supportive. They've helped us hold other meetings with business owners of the area. We had a meeting last evening, in fact. We've also liaised with other government departments. So for instance, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources with respect to hydrogeology and various other bits and pieces. We have made various presentations to the real estate agency, to the development industry, which includes your architects, consultant planners. We've also presented to NGOs such as National Trust, Invest, and the Audubon Society. And through making all these presentations and meetings, that has been our primary way of receiving the feedback. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, that is the key way in which we need the feedback to help finalize and shape what this plan will look like.
Yeah, sounds great. So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are pretty much going above and beyond to make sure that this whole plan is very inclusive. And, with that being said, I definitely want to encourage the audience that, if you're just the typical Bermudian, or if you're one who has a business that's vested directly in that area, this is an opportunity for you to really ask any questions that you may have, because this really probably impacts you more than most other people in this country. So don't, waste it. This is an opportunity to ask as many questions as you want to get the answers so that you're satisfied. And when you leave this presentation, you are fully informed of what this means to you. Okay. So moving on to the next question we have here. I understand that the plan is not an operative document at present. What processes do you have to go through for it to become an operative document, and how long will this take?
Okay, sure. So the legislative process that we must follow requires a local plan, in this case, or any development plan, to go through a formal public consultation process. And what that essentially means is it is officially gazetted in the government's gazette, and that started on August 2nd. And so we are required to do a certain, number of weeks. We went with approximately 2 months, so from August 2nd until October the 8th. So it's during this period of time that any views, dare I say objections, it can happen, representations that are made from the public, those are considered formal objections and representations. And so what we do with those is the planners will work to resolve those objections. So we can do that any number of ways, usually through, further, negotiation or, meetings with the objector to help them understand perhaps, the intent behind the policies. Maybe there could be some level of misunderstanding. And also, perhaps receiving any feedback through those objections, we can revise the plan accordingly, with the ultimate aim to essentially resolve any objections. Now, of course, if there are objections that are unable to be resolved for one reason or another, those officially will be referred to a tribunal, which is appointed by the minister responsible for planning. And so during those tribunal hearings, what occurs is that the tribunal will hear both individual case being presented. So the Department of Planning will present their case on the policy. The objector will have their opportunity to have their say on the merits of their objection. And ultimately, the tribunal will put their recommendations forth to the minister, and the minister will then decide how he wishes to proceed with that particular objection and ultimately the plan. Now, in order for the plan to be formally adopted, it does require approval, legislative approval in the House of Assembly in order for it to become fully ratified and operative. So we are hoping that this plan will become operative in early next year. So winter 2022 is our objective.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answers for sure. So another question we have is about trying to get people to actually visit the area. So do the plans include any marketing of the area to encourage tourists as well as members of the public to visit the area, patronize the stores? Traditionally, it's been an area that hasn't really received as much attention as we would like. So, people are rightly concerned that, people will be going there once all these improvements are made.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'll draw attention to the overall vision and objectives. So, some of these objectives speak to, encouraging new forms of architecture, contemporary, innovative forms of architecture. We know our tourists, they love Bermuda's architecture, and also we need to celebrate the existing historic assets of the area. I know that there are various, walking tours that are currently occurring throughout Northeast Hamilton. These are all things that attract tourists. And not only that, but you have, when the BTA talks about, tourists want authentic cultural experiences. We have a lot of, restaurants that have been there for a very long time that have proven to be very popular with not just locals, but tourists as well. I remember actually a story, Kenny telling me that's one of the first places he went to was restaurants in Northeast Hamilton. But I will allow either Paul or Kenny to maybe perhaps elaborate on that question in particular.
Yeah, I'll just get a couple of points to make. In terms of marketing, that probably falls outside of our remit as the planning department. But, our job is to ensure that Northeast Hamilton becomes a more appealing place to visit through the control that we have through the planning application process. So, we can certainly hopefully improve some of the environmental and social aspects of Northeast Hamilton as far as our remit goes. It would then be for work perhaps with the Bermuda Tourism Authority, or even through the community planning concept, that we could start to look at potentially implementing some projects which would actually encourage people to the area, and then the marketing process, I think, would follow on from that.
Yeah, I would just also quickly add as well that we are quite keen to collaborate further with other departments, whether it be the police, the Corporation of Hamilton. So it is an overall effort to really improve the area. And if you are looking at sort of improvements in terms of encouraging people in there, we are quite keen to encourage and promote the improvements of the pedestrian environments in the area too. So when a development proposal does come forward, we are quite keen to really look at all of those aspects, and hopefully by looking at that and really encouraging positive developments, that will bring about consequent benefits, which would hopefully improve the amount of visitors to the area.
Okay, thank you very much for these, again, comprehensive answers. Just want to remind the public again, email us at thegov.bm if you have any questions. We'd be more than happy to answer them. Another great opportunity, like I said, to find out how this impacts you, especially the businesses and persons that live in the area. We have a lot of residents back there. So these improvements impact you, and this is your opportunity to ask questions, to find out anything that you want to know about it. So I have another question here. It reads, or simply enough, how can I submit my comments on the plan?
Right. So there's multiple ways you can do that. Through our website, the planning system actually went completely paperless about 2 years ago. So there is a link within our website that actually can take you to that portal where you can apply online and submit any objection. Now, notwithstanding that, we have a dedicated web page to the Northeast Hamilton Plan, which provides a lot more clear information on how to go about doing that. And of course, pick up the phone, stop by our office. We are here. We're happy to walk you through the system. We don't want persons to feel, well, if I have to do it online, I won't bother. We certainly don't want folks to feel like that. So, if you prefer to submit something in hard copy form, we can certainly accommodate that. Of course, we encourage utilizing our new system. But like I said, we do appreciate that there are folks out there who would much prefer to submit a hard copy. So again, I'll read out our email address that is dedicated to this process for the Northeast Hamilton Plan. It's nehconsultation@gov.bm. And as you mentioned, the website is listed, and actually a direct link to the plan itself is posted on the Facebook page. But again, our website is www.planning.gov.bm.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have another question. So with improvement on green spaces or of green spaces, will there be some thought to any antisocial behaviors and ensuring the improved green space will not become abused?
Sure. I'll let the Kenny and Paul answer that more succinctly, but just a off the cuff comment. Last night at the meeting hosted by BEDC, one of the police inspectors was present at the meeting, and he was giving an update on crime and ways to mitigate that. And he was explaining that the police are actually quite willing to assist when it comes to finding the right design for new development, or even incorporating new design elements into existing buildings that can help to deter criminal activity or even, mitigate against it. So, in that dialogue, it was very helpful. I think we kind of decided last night that the police probably need to form part of a bit more consultation, even when planning applications get submitted. So I think that would be a really proactive approach. But like I said, I'll let Paul and Kenny speak a bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key, really, that we do get that feedback from the police. And yeah, as Victoria mentioned, there are things that you can do in terms of design. For example, you can incorporate windows into these public areas to improve the surveillance of them. When you are designing buildings, you can look to sort of reduce the amount of like blind corners around there. There are things like that that can be actually incorporated into the design of buildings. So I think it's one of those which it's important to look at planning applications as a whole, and we do take into account all of these factors when we look at designs, and hopefully developers would be encouraged to do the same.
Just to touch on that, I think the question was about green spaces specifically. So I think a lot of what we've spoken about today would require a collaborative approach, and that's why our consultation has been so extensive, and we've involved a wide number of different entities in that. And key to the issues being talked about in terms of antisocial behaviour, yeah, we can, as the Department of Planning, we can attempt to ensure that places and spaces are intelligently designed so as to discourage antisocial behaviour. But part of discouraging it will be a police presence in the area. And as Paul said, we want to increase our consultation with the police. So I think it's just part of that collaboration, also involving the cooperation, that we can start to address some of these issues, but planning can certainly be a part of that process.
All right, thank you very much. So next question that we have here is what is being done to encourage area businesses to support or promote the area themselves? Because, as we've already said, and we're fully aware, they have the most vested interest in this area. So what are they doing as a group, singularly?
So we are aware that the BEDC has their own set of initiatives to encourage, more activity from a commercial standpoint. As I mentioned earlier, we have been working quite closely with them in respect of what our remit is, and what this plan seeks to achieve is to, at the end of the day, provide a flexible, conducive framework policy-wise that will essentially attract more investment. And when we have the opportunity, when assessing planning applications and working with developers, that is when the opportunity arises for us to negotiate and get what we call as planning gains. And that's where you get the community benefit piece that comes in there. But in respect of, what businesses can do collectively, again, from our standpoint, we want to hear from them. Like, what is it that they want to see more of in that part of the city? Whether it's a certain type of benefit. I mean, we were talking earlier today, it'd be good to, reach out and do some more kind of detailed survey work on maybe by district. What are the types of things that are lacking in each district as shown on the map in the actual plan itself? What are the things that you'd like to see more of, whether it's, public art or better pavements, sidewalks, more crosswalks, less on-street, parking, all of the above. And it's, planning really has the opportunity because of our process and the way it is. Every time a planning application comes in, we consult as part of that process with so many different entities. As I mentioned, the Corporation of Hamilton would be one, the EDC could be another, the police, many different consultees. And, as planners, our job is to get as much feedback as possible and then use that information in order to make the best planning decision on a development proposal. So I don't know if I really answered the question, but I've tried to give more information on how this all works.
You did a great job.
I'll just comment on that as well. As Vicky said, yeah, we met with, and we've met with BEDC on a number of occasions. So in terms of what the businesses are doing as a group to promote the area, I guess that falls slightly outside of our remit, but we do know that BEDC are very active in the area. Obviously, it's been designated as an economic empowerment zone, and that comes with various advantages for the area. But BEDC, I believe, are in the process of establishing a physical presence in terms of a hub in the area to support businesses in terms of all the various aspects that businesses conduct on a day-to-day basis, including like accounts and things like that. So BEDC are doing a lot in the area, and as we said earlier on, we've worked closely with them in preparation of this plan.
Okay, great. So I have another suggestion, I guess it is, and it probably stems from what you said earlier. I think it was Vicky, about the tours that are given by the Corporation of Hamilton. We know that Bermuda is a World Heritage Site. Many people come here for a history to see all the different locations around the island. And, it may be ideal to have a brochure of historic sites in that Northeast Hamilton area where people can go on a self-guided tour and walk around instead of having to wait and, go in groups. They can just explore the island and that area themselves. Just, something that I think is worth exploring. So next question we have is, and this is from Facebook. So will there be opportunities for increased pedestrianization and permeability throughout Northeast Hamilton to encourage people to visit this area of the city?
We would love that. We would love that in all of Hamilton where we could achieve that. And again, a big part of achieving that is, working with the Corporation of Hamilton. I mean, one of the biggest challenges I think that faces Northeast Hamilton is the established route for our container trucks. So the established route takes it straight down Court Street, which, our building that we work in here, the Dame Lois Brown Evans building, we sit facing that street and the trucks are just endless. And, it's not a pleasant environment, especially if you want to encourage alfresco dining along Court Street, that would be lovely, but, not so pleasant if you have container trucks, going down there. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But certainly I think, change is hard to accept by most places. And I think sometimes you just have to really push for it because it's needed. And I think when people finally see the positive impacts that come from making difficult, decisions to change things, I think ultimately people will be pleased with the outcome. So, when I think of other places that could be pedestrianized, or even just remove some of the street parking, and allowing for, wider sidewalks. But yeah, no, these are certainly things that we want to see. And again, based on the map of the districts, perhaps, we really encourage folks to reach out and be like, it'd be great if you could really argue for this street to become pedestrianized, or even changing this street into a single lane so that you could use the other existing lane as, increased sidewalk to allow other uses like pop-ups or, really the sky's the limit. So again, it's we've got ideas, but at the end of the day, it's particularly those that live in the area. Northeast Hamilton represents the largest residential population of the city. Historically always did, and still to this day does. So, this is where they live. And, it's very important that we get a good understanding as to what they want to see. So.
Okay, I'm just going to reach out to the audience one more time to submit your questions. Any concerns, feedback that you want to give on the plan, now is the opportunity to do so. Let me just check, see what other questions we've received. So yeah, any thoughts on any further playground equipment? It was mentioned that and this was in the presentation, the park that is located at the junction of Court and Dundonald Street, maybe a playground down there for kids in the area to play.
Yeah, that's certainly something which would be very very encouraging, and we would like to see that. I suppose it's important, as Victoria mentioned, to get that feedback from the community as in terms of what the priorities are in particular for the area. But yeah, that's been identified as an area which could really be exploited as a positive in terms of again allowing more people into the area, creating a more pleasant environment, and really adding to the already sort of positive community aspect of the local area.
Okay. Let me just see if we have any other questions, but I think that was the last one. Oh wait, I think we could just got another one. All right, so the question is, what areas have been highlighted that affect one's safety, in brackets, tourists and locals in Northeast Hamilton? And then, so the two-part question, second part is, and then how or what is being done to address those issues? And I think you guys already touched on this, but if you can just probably elaborate on it.
Sure. I mean, again, this is where engaging with the police, they've established, a designated team for Northeast Hamilton. So they have, they collect the stats on, what areas are more susceptible than others to criminal activity. But let me just go back to the question because I was looking at it myself, actually. They've identified predominantly, I think it's Court Street. I don't want to put, suggest things that aren't accurate, but they certainly have identified the areas. And I mean, just as even another example, walking to where I park my car, if I leave at nighttime, the lack of street lighting is appalling in some parts of Northeast Hamilton. And, if you're, walking alone after dark, it's not a comfortable feeling. So again, it's, working with a corporation and, when it comes to other parts of infrastructure that affect safety, all those things are so absolutely important. And again, it's, we encourage, we're one of our key objectives is to create a safe place, promote healthier and safer communities. And again, through looking at these development applications, right, okay, well, how is this building being designed and what can be done on the outskirts of the building to facilitate a safer environment? Again, that's our opportunity to really, figure out where can we get a gain for this area.
And just on that as well, I mean, obviously we're planners, we're not the police, and we haven't done any sort of public safety analysis as part of the process of preparing this plan. That clearly falls outside of our remit. But we do know, even anecdotally, that Court Street is the hub of the area for criminal activity. And we have identified a couple of specific development opportunity sites within that area. And that's, we've identified that as a key area to try and get some regeneration initiatives happening. And as far as the Department of Planning has an influence, but by encouraging new development within the area, we can hopefully sort of start to change the environmental and social conditions as I spoke about previously. So that's the extent to which we could potentially influence crime issues that are occurring in Northeast Hamilton.
Awesome, thank you. So just change gears a little bit. So the next question is, beyond the already identified protected buildings, sites, and areas, how will you determine cultural heritage assets to protect and enhance?
So we do have a historic district. It is actually, as it exists already, it's covered with what's called a historic protection area. So any building falling within that area requires, that much more of an assessment in terms of making sure that development is sympathetic to the historic character of the area. That area in particular, it has a number of very valuable buildings, one of which was the subject of quite a lot of media attention not too long ago. We do have, the department did prepare a draft list of buildings to be listed in the city of Hamilton a number of years ago. We still have that list. We still wish to pursue getting those buildings listed. That is something that ultimately, it is a decision that must be made by the government of the day. we certainly advocate for it. But that aside, it's important to note that when looking at the plan and looking at that particular district, you know, we put forth a number of objectives that we would like to see carried out. Not to say that you can't do something else in that district that perhaps is not, you know, of a historic character or nature. But at the end of the day, it has to be harmonious with what is there currently. And that is the key. And again, you know, it's having the opportunities to, you know, have suggestions. You know, if that person who asked that question, you know, please submit your thoughts, submit your ideas. We wish to hear from you. Because again, as I mentioned, these are the things that we need in order to finalize what the content of this plan has. Kenny, Paul, I don't know if you want to elaborate any further on that point.
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of stems back to the community benefits concept again, that, yeah, if we do get, typically we're looking at, if we do get a development proposal within a particular district, we would look to provide some kind of benefit within the same district. So if there is some development proposed within or near to the historic area, we could see or look at that type of thing as what would be an obvious benefit for that area. But beyond that, I would just say that this plan is not like the end product. This is really the starting point, the framework, and we will be looking at producing further documents in more detail within specific parts of the city, and addressing specific issues. So that would include heritage, design, crime, things like that. So we are, in the future, we will be looking to do that. And so we would always be looking to get those views from the local community, even after this period's expired for this plan.
Great, thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank the members of the public that have submitted their questions. It's much appreciated. As we said from the beginning, this is a consultation. We want your feedback, your suggestions, your ideas. And, you know, while the panel before us are pretty much experts in this field, they've worked at it for so long, you know, no one knows everything. So we are relying on those that are actually, you know, perhaps living in the area, that, you know, work there, breathe it, that can really contribute toward, you know, thoughtful discussion and improvements on the plans. So as I said already, this is an opportunity for you to provide your feedback. If you want to, you can email ask us at gov.bm, or feel free to just post your questions on the Facebook page. And again, thank you for those who are doing so. So on to our next question. So the question reads, could community heritage research be integrated into the plan and process to identify and collect the area's cultural heritage, tangible and intangible?
I got just a quick comment on that. I mean, I think we have to remember that what we've prepared is a land use plan, and there are certain limitations and certain content that you can include in a land use plan. And I think that would just be stepping out slightly outside of our remit. It's an interesting idea, but I think that would be more appropriate to explore through a community planning initiative, which is something which the department is looking to roll out in various parishes across the island, and that would be done at a more localized level. But as a Department of Planning, you know, we can identify assets and we can seek to protect them through the planning process. But in terms of intangibles, I'm not so sure that would be feasible or a relevant part of a strictly land use document.
Okay, understood. So the next question is about public art. And Paul, I believe in your presentation portion, you spoke about that. And it reads, so what about public art and art trail focusing on key buildings in the city, incorporating murals, installations, and writings would be great. So like I said, you did speak about it. Is there anything else you can elaborate to specifically address this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, that's something that we would be quite keen to get more information on from the person who did put forward that suggestion. And yeah, there are other entities such as the City of Hamilton who might be able to assist in that. But certainly the Department of Planning would be quite keen to be involved in those discussions. It sort of stems back to the question which I answered previously in terms of, yeah, we are quite happy to look at those as potential like community benefit projects, but also there's the opportunity for us to engage in other departments, and yeah, we can look at that type of initiative through subsequent reports and documents. We do have a heritage officer who's actually not been at the department for too long, and yeah, that's probably one of the things that we would be looking to look at in terms of really looking at I suppose we would call it a heritage strategy for the city. So yeah, it's a bit of work which we'd be looking at doing, but it's certainly something that would be very encouraging.
Okay. So the next question is there the possibility that this style of plan might be used more broadly for the island?
Yes, that is the intent. What we have been hearing, just even through the public consultation with this document, is that persons really like the flexible approach with the overarching objectives and strategic principles. Because at the end of the day, you know, particularly as we've seen it in the last little while in the world, we need to really remain dynamic with our plan making. And what I mean by that is, you know, in the past, certain policies have been drafted, and, you know, whilst the intent behind the policy is a very good one, sometimes it can't always be applied to every scenario. And unfortunately, it is inhibited planners from being able to make good planning decisions for a property that perhaps zoning is not conducive to what the development proposal is, you know, involving. But at the end of the day, when the planner actually visits the site and assesses the site in the context of the neighborhood and surrounding areas, the proposal makes sense. So with this new plan, this particular framework allows the planners to really assess all aspects of the proposal in terms of, does this make sense for this lot? Does this make sense for this area? Can we bring about a benefit, a significant benefit to the area as a result of this development proposal? And it really allows for that, you know, conducive environment to allow for really positive change. So, I mean, thus far, knock on wood, we've had really good feedback, which is great. We want more. We need more feedback. You know, like I think it was Paul or Kenny said earlier, you know, we've got some ideas, but we don't live there. We don't, you know, we're not working in some of these businesses in there. We don't get to see what they see and have the history that they do. And it's that we really need to hear more on. So yeah, I know we've said it ad nauseum, but please reach out to us because we really do need that feedback.
Well, I can say that it's paying off because I do have one person that has just written on Facebook saying that they will definitely be writing in with their suggestions. All right, and I think that we just have one last suggestion, and that is that they feel that the area has an opportunity for a heritage museum focused on the history of education in Bermuda. But let me just double check to make sure that is the last question. Yeah, I think that's the last one. I want to thank you all for participating, members of the public, very much appreciate it. And of course, the team from the Department of Planning. Victoria, I don't know if you or your team want to have any final remarks.
Well, this is the first time we've done a Facebook Live. So we tested out a new way of doing public consultation, yes, which I think actually has really turned out well. And I think it's something we need to do a lot more of. You know, gone are the days, especially during COVID, of having your standardized town hall meeting where, you know, how those can go sometimes. So you know, in the new world of virtual meetings, we've done quite a number of them, you know, but we still do embrace, you know, the kind of face-to-face as well. So, you know, please don't hesitate in coming out. We're on the 5th floor of the Dame Lois Brown Evans building. You do have to go through security at the bottom. But once you get up here, we'll be here to help. So, and thank you, Mike. It was really awesome to have you here to help us through this. And we thank everyone for tuning in.
My pleasure. Everyone, have a great night.
You as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.